Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Interfaith Community Sanctuary. I'm going to get over the microphone case there. So good to see everybody this morning on this wonderful summer morning at Interfaith Community Sanctuary. My name is Sally Joe. I'm a co-minister here. And Jamal sends his regrets. He is preaching at as I told the rabbi, a unity of something somewhere. It's, you know what I mean, a unity church, but I don't remember which one in the region. He's doing his sermon there today. So he sends his regrets that he cannot be here today, but he's here with us in spirit. And as are all the people out in cyberspace who we welcome to our community. And I'm going to ring the bell, which is the official start of our program. As you notice, I have lit the World Peace candles and opened the altar so all the wisdom of the sacred texts can filter out into the room and help us come to a peaceful understanding of all that the rabbi is going to share with us today. We're very excited to have him, and we will be introducing him in a minute. And we have our Divine Feminine candle here as well, which reminds us about the balance of masculine and feminine that exists in every creature and every human being in the universe, and that we are always seeking a better balance of all of our energies. So we will begin with an acknowledgement of the native peoples of our land and an invitation to our ancestors to join us today. And I will begin with that. So we like to begin our services by thinking back in our own history, in our family history, in the history of all of the teachers we have worked with throughout our lives and the people we have learned from, starting with our parents and grandparents, and people might have been related to us by blood, and also the people who came into our circle during our lives and became influences on our lives, and all of the people who influenced all of the people who influenced all of the people, and as the Native American people say, all my relations. And I love that phrase because it really helps us be inclusive and remember that we're related to the trees and the animals and the mosquitoes and the spiders and everything that crawls and flies and creeps around our universe. And we're also related to the stars because the elements of the stars are within us. So let's expand our consciousness a bit to welcome all of these influences on our lives and help us to be clear and peaceful and in a state of serenity would be my wish for all of us, and we invite our ancestors to help us with that. And I would also like to honor the people who settled this land long before we ever came here, and who have been stewarding the land and keeping it for us so that we can continue to enjoy it. Haichka Sayam, thank you so much, Creator. Ancestors, for the good guidance you share with us each day and when we need it most. Prayers for all who need some light in their days, to learn to listen with their hearts, learn to listen to the spirits in the wind, which touches their own. Aho to all my relations. And specifically to the Native American people who we know have been here and continue to live here, and we honor their presence here with us and before us, and we stand on their unceded territory, and to note that we also pay Real Rent Seattle to the Duwamish tribe as a small token of our appreciation for our being here and trying to be at peace with them at all times. Amen. And I will ask Isla to give us an offering to the Divine Feminine.
Good morning, everyone. This is so beautiful, Sally Joe. O gentle, O kind, O blessed Sophia, thy children on earth call unto thee. We pray thee, beloved mother, to cast forth thy net of woven starlight, fling it wide across the ocean of the universe, to gather us home to the realms of light. Amen.
Take that one up. Now that we got the seating card settled, I have the privilege today of introducing Rabbi Olivier BenHaim. Olivier's been a friend of mine for, it's got to be over 5 years now. We, ever since I stumbled into bed Alef one Saturday morning for a Torah study, and afterwards he could never get rid of me. I have had the privilege of knowing him and of enjoying his wisdom and his teaching. And I am sure today that, you all, those of you who haven't heard him before, you're in for a treat. Those of you who have heard him before, you're in for a treat. This month, our discernment for the year has been on sanctuary. Has been on concentrating on the part of our name that says sanctuary, intercommunity sanctuary. And this month's aspect of sanctuary is sanctuary in time. And the rabbi is going to talk with us about Shabbat and what a blessed sanctuary it is for us in time. So without further ado, I'm going to give the floor to the rabbi.
Rich, we are much older than that. I think you came to bed Alef before COVID, so yeah. No, you can sit here. You can sit here, or there, or anywhere. Well, good morning, everybody. Shavua Tov, we say in Hebrew, a good week to all of us and to our planet, to our world, and all the people and living beings in it. It's such an honor to be here. I have not been here for a while, and it's so good to share in this sacred space with you, in this sanctuary. So today I'd like to talk to you about what Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, if you've never met Abraham Joshua Heschel in his writings, jump on Amazon and find any of his books. He's just an incredible teacher, writer, author, storyteller. And one of his most famous books actually is called The Sabbath. And it's always a book I recommend to all newcomers to our community and really to anyone that I meet. Because we all do some kind of Sabbath. Doesn't matter which day of the week it is. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel called a palace in time, sometimes even a cathedral in time, the Sabbath, what we call in Hebrew Shabbat. It is a day of rest that we are enjoined to observe and keep as one of the 10 pronouncements. I know maybe some of you have heard the term the 10 commandments, but they're not commandments. They are pronouncements, they are utterances. So we at Bet Alef like to call them the 10 pronouncements. So I think I want to break it down into 3 different stages, because really Shabbat is something that continues to unfold and continues to be explored. And I want to explore with you 3 different dimensions of it, if you allow me. So stage 1, first stage. The practice of keeping Shabbat is one of really of the most ancient practices in our tradition, because it comes from the Hebrew Bible. It comes from the Torah, for 5 books of Moses, the Pentateuch. There's so many names for it. And you find that injunction to connect to the Shabbat as a practice from the last few verses in the book of Genesis, in the first chapter of the book of Genesis, and the story of creation. The story that the universe was created in 6 days. And then on the seventh day, we see that God stopped creating and Shabbated and rested. Right? So we find it in Genesis, in that passage, very famous passage. But we find it also in the book of Exodus, because the book, the stories are repeated throughout the Torah as well. And in the book of Exodus, we learn that God created the universe in 6 supernal days. It's not actual 24-hour days. So we don't exactly know what that word means in the story. What is a day? Before there was light and dark, before there was a universe, before there were planets and sun traveling across. So we don't exactly know what that word means, but we call them supernal days, maybe the days in the mind of God, whatever that looks like. And then God stopped creating, and it says in the book of Exodus that God resouled on the seventh day. Vayinafash in Hebrew. Nefesh in Hebrew is the soul. Vayinafash, God souled again, if you want. So there's kind of a very beautiful injunction here, because for us, as in many other traditions, we seek to practice imitatio Dei. We seek to copy or to imitate what God has done, so as a guideline for our lives. And so this theological injunction became a practice of trying to imitate God, and every seventh day to rest, to stop creating as God did, and to engage in matters of the soul. So in ancient times, when we lived in the land of Israel and had one and then another one, several temples, we lived in our land as an agrarian society. And so these injunctions that we find in the Bible come to be really literally a day of rest for ourselves, but also for all of our households, meaning also even our slaves have to have a day off. It was kind of a revolutionary idea that people could have one day off during the week. And that happened about 3,000 years ago. People didn't know about days off. This is not a concept that existed in the world. And so it was suddenly put in a specific tradition with a specific injunction that no, after 6 days of work, doing whatever you need to do, even when you live in an agrarian society and you are completely dependent on the land, to take a day off, sometimes it feels very threatening. It could be very challenging. But nonetheless, we had to do that. So it was imposed upon us to actually take a day off and give everybody a day off. Also, there was something new in the world. Like, as people had, it was a common practice to have slaves. Slaves? You don't give days off, right? But in the Torah, it says, no, absolutely, you do that. Everybody needs to have a day off. Everybody, no exclusions. But then you can see in the Torah that this notion of having a day of rest, 1/7 of your life, 1/7 of your life needs to be a day of rest. God translated also into the rhythm of life itself, and especially in the agrarian society, into the rhythm of the agricultural cycles. That's where we start to get also the seventh year of leaving your land to lay fallow, right? So there was also an interesting notion that you should stop working. You should stop tilling the soil. You should stop working the land every 7 years because, the earth itself needs to have a Shabbat. The earth itself needs to have a Shabbat. And then it gets transferred into, obviously because it's an agrarian society, into the economy of the country as well, into the economy, the ideal of the economy of the land. And one of the things, for example, that comes out of that is the year of the Jubilee, right? Every seven years, right? There is a Jubilee in the land and all the debts are canceled. Anyone who lost their property because they're on the wrong side of the mountain and the rain didn't fall this year and they had to sell their land, everybody gets back into their ancestral property on the 50th year of that cycle. So you can see that this 1/7 became infuses in biblical time, infuses all aspects of life. Now, that's stage one, how it all came to be in time and history. Stage two, the next level, is always the level that begins with rabbinic Judaism. So I need to explain why there is a rabbinic Judaism. There's biblical Judaism and there is rabbinic Judaism. And those are two very different things. Because there is a whole way of life that we lived when we lived on our land for 1,000 years that was tethered to the rituals of the temples in Jerusalem. First temple, second temple. It was all tethered to the existence of the temples in Jerusalem. But when in the year 70 of the Common Era, the Romans burned down Jerusalem and burned down the temple and exiled our people, we were all taken in as slaves and sent to work in the farthest corners of the Roman Empire. We lose contact with our ancestral land. Many of us stay there for hundreds of years more, and there are families that never left for thousands of years. But nevertheless, the rabbis come on and say, the rabbis were the kind of the political and religious leaders. There was no difference really at the time, and say, how are we going to save this tradition of ours? Not that we don't have an anchor in the land. We are now dispersed in all the corners of the Roman Empire. How are we going to preserve our tradition, our lives, our ways of being? And the rabbis were tasked. So the rabbis were the first new spiritual leaders of the Jewish community without their ancestral land in their hands anymore. And so they had to think about making everything portable, because you have to make everything portable so that if you are in Cordoba in Spain, or in Rome in Italy, or in Baghdad in Iraq — Baghdad was not born yet, but for simplification — but you see, as you're dispersed all over the known world, how are you going to be able to have common practices, common knowledge, and common traditions? And so they take the Sabbath and the Torah as a portable text, and the Sabbath as the two pillars of Jewish life. And they say, we are going to center our evolving tradition now onto those two pillars. They decided that wherever the Jews went in the world, they would continue to follow the fourth of the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt keep the Shabbat. And they said, how we are going to help the Jews wherever they are now find a way to practically make that part of their lives. And the way the rabbis did it is that they looked into the Torah and said, let's see if there is a blueprint there that we can extract from and devise a series of practices that people can take on in their home wherever they are, whether they're alone, whether there is a community, wherever they are. So they turn to the book of Exodus and to chapter 35 and find there a guide for practice. In the story of chapter 35 in the book of Exodus, for those of you who know the Torah portion, it's called Vayakhel. It's the Torah portion where Moses, through the transmission of God, is giving the people the instructions at the foot of Mount Sinai to construct the tabernacle. What was the tabernacle? The tabernacle was a portable structure in which we would put the tablets of the law, the two tablets of the law that Moses brought back. If you've seen Cecil B. DeMille, the 10 Commandments, you know what I'm talking about, right? Moses comes down the mountain with the tablets and we got to put them somewhere. So we create what's called a mishkan, a tabernacle, and we'll put the tablets of the law there. And Moses and Aaron will use that space that we will transport, built and rebuilt and built and rebuilt through our wanderings through the desert. And this will be our temporary church, our temporary synagogue, our temporary place of worship that will sit in the midst of all of the nation as we travel. Right? So they build this sacred space, basically, this transportable sacred space. The way it's built really is the same way that, let's say later on, but we believe that it's actually reversed engineered, that the temple in Jerusalem will be built with the same dimensions, the same specs, if you want, the same IKEA brochure. So they look into this story, and it's a very interesting story because just a verse before Moses starts to channel God's instructions to build the tabernacle, Moses says, before we do any of that, remember the Sabbath. We have to remember the Sabbath and keep one day of the week where we're not going to work, where we're going to keep the Shabbat, and then we'll start the work. So the whole instructions to build this sacred space, this most sacred space where we believe God came to dwell with us every time we were encamped somewhere, so the most sacred of spaces in the world, before the instructions are given for that, God says, wait a minute, remember Shabbat. Shabbat comes first. So the rabbis looks into this story and say, oh, that's a blueprint for us. That's a blueprint for us. Why? Because they say it seems that the Torah is telling us that the Shabbat is more important than even building the most sacred space on earth. It is more important than building the temple, the tabernacle of the Hebrews as they wander through the desert. And so they say, whatever we were doing to build the tabernacle, these are going to be the things that are going to be prohibited from doing when we want to create a day of complete rest. So they say, okay, what were the things that came into building the tabernacle, designing the tabernacle? Okay, so they look into this whole Torah portion. It's okay, they had obviously a wooden structure. So what goes into building a solid wooden structure, but is also, portable, IKEA? You have to be able to move it. So based on that, you're not supposed to hammer. You're not supposed to, you're not supposed to put two things together and tie them together. You're not supposed, anything that went into building the tabernacle, that's the things we're not supposed to do when we want to keep the Shabbat, because the Shabbat supersedes building even the tabernacle. So you have beautiful tapestries. People brought, beautiful pieces of clothing that of yarn that or of anything that they took from Egypt, and they did this beautiful tapestries with it. Okay, so you're not supposed to sew. You're not supposed to do that because they did that to build the tabernacle. You're not supposed to light fire because with the fire, you made tar to make sure that the things were held together. So you're not supposed to light fire because also with fire you could do other things to help with the building. So no fire, on and on the list went. And they came up with 39 prohibitions. 39 prohibitions of work. Why? Because the injunction is you should not create. So these are the 39 prohibitions that stops you from creating, from adding something into the world. And the rabbi said, we're going to follow and then expand it upon the original 39 prohibition to say, okay, this is how we're going to keep Shabbat. We're going to keep Shabbat. We're not, you're not going to be allowed to do this. You're not going to be allowed to do that. You're not going to be able to do all of these things that you're not supposed to do because, we learned that from the Torah and the building of the tabernacle. 39 prohibition. So, how does that look like today? Well, today it looks like if you're not supposed to kindle fire on Shabbat based on the Torah, right? Then you're not supposed to kindle anything that sparks. So you're not supposed to turn on your car when you have a spark plug. So no car. You're not supposed to turn on electricity because that's fire. So no electricity. When I was a kid and I followed the Shabbat very strictly, and very religious Jews do the same, before Shabbat came on Friday afternoon, I would go into my kitchen, open the door of the fridge, and take out the light bulb in the fridge. Because then I could open the door and get some food. But if I couldn't have opened the door of the fridge because I would have caused the light to come on. So no light. You're saying, well, the Jews must be, in the depth of winter, you must spend, the whole day in the dark. So yes and no. So what we invented in the last few decades as timer switches. So you plug your timer switch in the main box in your fuse box of your house, and on Shabbat, the timer keeps the lights on, and at 10 p.m. you program it, switches all the lights off in your house. So you can you can work through different things. You're supposed to make all your meals, for example, prior to Shabbat starting, right? So it's Fridays are frantic. It's incredible. I lived in Jerusalem for many, many years, and Thursday night and Friday, everybody's shopping. I mean, the supermarkets, the fresh markets, the shuk, everything is buzzing with people. It's incredible. There is like bazillion people on the streets, and everybody's running like crazy. Why? Because you have to do all your shopping. You have to get home. You have to cook. You have to cook meals for Friday night. You have to cook Saturday morning, Saturday lunch, depending if it's a late summer night, probably Sunday evening as well, right? So you have to have everything ready. In modern times, we have what's called a plata, which is something you plug in on Friday that stays warm. So you have lukewarm coffee that you can have on that thing. You don't unplug it; it just stays like that. So you can have lukewarm water and coffee, so you can do that. It's a thing. It's a real thing. But in Jerusalem, 1 hour before sundown, because that's where Shabbat begins, there is a siren that sounds throughout the whole city that says, you have 1 hour. You have 1 hour. And then you start to see the streets completely emptying. Like within minutes, all the zillions of people that were running through the streets, everything just disappears. And within an hour, it's a no man's land. If you ever walked on Shabbat through the streets of Jerusalem, you are alone. There is nobody there. There is nobody there. I used to do that a lot because from where I lived, I used to go to the Western Wall in the old city. And so I would walk through the streets of Jerusalem on Saturday morning, and you're alone. And it's fascinating. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. So I can give you many more examples, and you might think in your mind already, oh, this is so prohibitive, this must be so hard to do, it must be so, there's so much, exclusions, things you can't do, but in fact, actually, it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's an incredible way of spending 24 hours. It's because, you can't have TV. You can't touch electricity. So no phone, no computer, no TV, no electronics whatsoever. You really stop. Everything just stops. Everything just stops. And suddenly you start to look at the people who live in your house. Because suddenly they're there. I mean, before you could ignore them, but now you can't. So there is a really beautiful connection, parents and children, that happen during Shabbat. It's quite wonderful because everything has been prepared before it starts. Nobody's working at anything. Mom is not cooking. There's no laundry happening. It's like we are just here for each other and with each other. It's traditional to go on a little walk around your neighborhood, so you meet your neighbors. Obviously, people that are more practicing go to synagogue for the Saturday morning prayers. Then you go back for the afternoon prayers, so it's very communal. There's always a little kiddush, a little nosh at the end of services. In some communities, there's a lot of vodka and schnapps, and the rabbi is very merry and it can be really fun. My friend in Jerusalem goes to a Romanian synagogue, and there's a lot of schnapps in the afternoon meal that you can have at the synagogue, and it's kind of a competition of who's going to bring the best bottle. And it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. So it is, maybe it may feel prohibitive from our perspective, but once you're really immersed in that life, it's really a beautiful, beautiful, sacred day. Something to truly experience. And it's, it may be hard for us because we don't live in this context. So it would be you would be an island in the midst of the world that never stops. But when you live in the world where everything stops, then it's a different thing. You're supported. There's an understanding. There is a community there that supports you. Everybody's doing the same thing. So that's the rabbinic take on it. And they took it really seriously. And if you're an Orthodox Jew, that's what you do. That's really what you do. That's what I did for the 21st years of my life, a little more. And some days I really miss it. But it's hard here because, my synagogue is a 25-minute, 30-minute drive from where I live. So I have to get in my car when I come to Shabbat services. In Jerusalem, you have your synagogue is, you live here and it's over there. Sometimes it's in the basement of your own building. It's everything is around that. All right. So that was stage 2, part 2, a rabbinic expression how to create sacred time, because that's what they're, all the things that I just shared with you is really about how do you create sacred time. You create sacred time by letting go of all the to-dos. That's what they thought. That's what they understood, right? You have to let go for 24 hours of doing and creating. It's a complete rest because we do nothing, It's the rediscovering the art of being bored. And it's something really powerful in rediscovering the art of being bored. Stage 3, which is oftentimes my favorite one, is the mystical understanding. So I dwell in the world of Kabbalah and the mystics, and the Jewish mystics had an added perspective on what Shabbat as sacred time was. For the Kabbalists, Shabbat is a metaphysical entity. It is, for them, it is a state of being that one enters into that brings an increased sense of nearness to God. Right? So they kind of let go of the trappings of the external aspect that the rabbinic tradition had created, and they say, okay, we're going to go inside ourselves now. Let go of the outer. Let's go into the inner. And for them, they see Shabbat as a pathway to draw nearer to God. And for them, the aim of Shabbat is to achieve spiritual heights, such as one would actually partake in God's original Shabbat. Like their aim is to sit at God's table. Forget about the rabbi's table with the schnapps and the vodka. The mystics, we want to sit at God's table. God is Shabbating every Saturday. That's where we want to sit. That's where we want to go. So they see Shabbat as a conduit to get to the uppermost spiritual layers. So for them, the tabernacle, which you remember was the base of rabbinic creation of Shabbat, the tabernacle no longer represents an actual physical construction where God is understood to dwell upon, but a vision for creation itself, and creation with a capital C. We, you and I, are still sitting at the foot of Mount Sinai. We are. And we are tasked with building this world as a tabernacle, as a sacred space. That's from the mystical perspective what we're here to do. All of us are sitting at the foot of Mount Sinai right now, and we have been told by God to create this universe, this world, the world we inhabit, into a tabernacle, into a temple. We are to transform our planet into a sacred container, to recognize it as a sacred container where the divine would come to dwell, known to every human being. Known to every human being. And how we do that? We do that through making every act, every spoken word, every thought even, every interaction with the world and with the people in it, a sacred interaction. Every breath of our life is an expression of the most holy. Now, it's a shift in consciousness that is we are being asked to do, because when we have a mundane consciousness, right, we see the world from a very opposing, dualistic perspective. But when we enter into Shabbat consciousness, then there is a pure oneness that is awakening within us, and the two-ness dissolves, and we see every moment, every breath, every second as an expression of the most holy and the most sacred. That is the goal of Shabbat. And through the 39 works of the tabernacle, we transform this world into the sacred place that it already is. It already is. So, for them, the world needs repairing, resowing, mending. It needs to be restored, but it cannot be. We can't do any of that unless we already are in Shabbat consciousness. So the Shabbat is here to transform ourselves into, so this is the deeper layer now. So the Shabbat is here to transform ourselves into tabernacles. Okay? The injunction here is to uplift, to raise the sparks of consciousness to the highest realm. The Zohar, which you have in your little in your altar there, the Zohar, which is the core mystical text of Judaism. The Zohar says that Shabbat is the name of the Blessed One, is the name of God. Shabbat is the name of God, perfect in all aspects. So Shabbat consciousness is the realization that nothing is lacking, that nothing is missing, that everything is always already perfect as it is. See, that's really the space that Shabbat, if we do it like in a religious way, even in the rabbinic way, when you really, there's nothing else that needs to be done. Once you step into Shabbat, it invites you into that realization that there is really nothing missing, nothing lacking. It's a shift in consciousness. It's a profound shift in consciousness. The divine presence then abides within you. This is from the teachings of the Kabbalah. The divine presence abides within you, opening your heart to know that all is perfect. The word for perfect in Hebrew is shalom. And it's a fascinating thing, because in English, when we think of perfect, we think perfect is the exclusion of the imperfect. Right? If something is perfect, it means that it's flawless. But in Hebrew, we use the word shalom. Shalom means peace. Shalom means wholeness. Something that is perfect is something that is made whole, meaning that it includes its perfection and its imperfection. So the word in Hebrew for perfection is actually very different than in English, and it's the word shalom. And the shalom is really wholeness, right? When you're perfect in yourself, you're whole. You have integrated all your polarities into one, right? So that's also something that we need to keep in mind. So there is also an injunction in the Torah. In the building of the tabernacle, God tells us, "Ve'asu li mikdash v'shachanti betocham." Let them make me a sanctuary that I might dwell within. So that's stage one. at the foot of Mount Sinai, we physically build a sanctuary. We received the injunction, let them make me a sanctuary. And we thought of it, okay, we need to build walls and a roof and, we build a sanctuary, a physical thing. That's what the Torah says. And then the rabbi says, well, that's not exactly it. When God says, let them build me a sanctuary that I might dwell within, he was really talking about making Shabbat. And so we're going to create a sacred time to invite God to dwell. One day every seventh, we're going to take care of vayinafash, of re-souling, like God did. And so we're going to create a sanctuary in time, not in space, but in time, Abraham, Joshua, Heschel, right? And in that sacred time, God will come to dwell. So that's what the Torah said. The Torah didn't say build actually something physical. The rabbis were talking obviously after the temple was destroyed. So for them it's like, it's not there anyway. So we have to reinvent it. So we are going to create it in time. But then the mystics came and said, no, you didn't read that sentence very correctly. There's a third layer. Ve'asu li mikdash ve'shachanti betocham. It says, let them make themselves into a sanctuary that I will dwell within them. The Hebrew actually allows for all those interpretations and all those translations. Let them make themselves into a sanctuary that I might dwell within them. V'shachanti betocham, that I may dwell within them, not amongst them. So the Hebrew allows for both. And that's what the mystics are taking it. That's where they're taking it. So Shabbat is now the transitional space between the physical and the metaphysical worlds. It is the space of absolute transcendence and seen in practice as a time, in fact, for deep meditation. If the way I like to see it is that Shabbat with the mystics became not an actual temple, a physical temple, but a meditation center. That's what it became. It's a place to practice meditation and to really go as deep as possible within yourself. It's also the space where the divine shefa, the divine energy, the divine flux that comes from the heavens, is channeled into our world. That Shabbat is the place where you can really channel divine energy of compassion, love, into the physical world. And so you have to make yourself into a channel for that, into a container for that channeling. Because the mystics see Shabbat with its roots, the roots of Shabbat are planted in heaven. And we have to go back to the roots of everything. And as such, Shabbat is understood as a taste of messianic time. Messianic time. They say messianic time will be a time that is all Shabbat. Every day will be Shabbat, a time that is all Shabbat. And it's a beautiful vision that our mystics are holding of the great Shabbat of the world. At the end of time, and I mean it somewhat literally because in those states, higher states of consciousness, the notion of separation and therefore the notion of time comes to be understood as non-existing. So the end of time, they hold the vision of the world where awareness of the divine presence will flow from and through every being and will be absorbed by every pore of the human self. So in conclusion, I'd like to bring it back to the practical. Sometimes it's good to come back to earth. So the fourth pronouncement, so the fourth commandment in Exodus tells us to remember the day of Shabbat and sanctify it. And the word for sanctify in Hebrew is kadosh. Kadosh means sacred, it means hallowed. And you have the Jewish prayer for the departed is the Kaddish. So it's a sacred prayer for the dead. The blessing over wine that we say several times during Shabbat is called the Kiddush, like I said, with schnapps sometimes and vodka. And so this word kadosh, which is to sanctify, which is to make sacred, also in Hebrew means to make separate, to make different, to make separate. And that's how we create Shabbat. We make this specific day, the specific 24 hours, a day that is different from all the other days of the week. And we separate it from the rest of the week. And now, in a world where being productive is how we measure our life's value, in a world where we are constantly goaded into doing, how can we fathom refraining from creating, from doing? We are constantly on the doing/producing hamster wheel, and we don't know when to stop anymore. We don't know when to stop anymore. We don't know when we're done. We just don't know when we're done. And Shabbat, for those who observe it, it's magical, because at sundown on Friday, no matter what, you're done. That's it. If you are an observant Jew, sundown on Friday, an hour before the sun disappears, you're done. You don't have a choice. You turn everything off. You're done. You're done. You're done. For 24 hours, you're completely done. All, your phone is off, your computer is off, your TV is off, all the groceries and the cleaning and the cooking has already taken place. You are done. For 24 hours, you're done. Now, do you know when you are done? I'm asking you. Like, is there time in your life, in your week, when you can look and say, okay, I'm done? And really be done. Not just be done like that minute, because, you finished the task that you had to do, I'm done. No, like being completely done. It's like, I can let go of the world right now. I can drop the world right here, and for 24 hours, not be part of it. Can you fathom that in your life? Do we ever know when we're done? I used to work for a very small coffee company. I don't know if you know, it's called Starbucks. And I remember that we would get the quarterly reports. You get your quarterly report, usually it's a few weeks after the quarter has ended, and you look at your numbers, you're like, oh, it's great, and you did great this year, you want to have a meeting with your team and to celebrate the quarter, but you're already in the next quarter, so you never can stop. You never can stop and say, hey, that was great, let's take a day off. No, because you're already in the middle of the next quarter, and we never are done. How can we're not trained. We don't know when to be done in our lives. I want to challenge you. I want to really challenge you to embrace Shabbat in your own way, whenever that is for you, and try to see how you can really be done. How you can really be done. I would like to challenge you. How would you do it? You don't have to have the 39 prohibitions, but how would you do it? Like, how do you make a day different from any other day? Would you maybe really turn your phone off? Or maybe reserve any call to only your loved ones? Maybe your Shabbat will be the day you actually call your parents, your siblings, right? Maybe that's your Shabbat practice. Once a week you call it all your beloveds. Would you turn the radio off? Would you turn the TV off? How do you make a day different? Would you make sure that once a week you go hiking, or you go fishing, or you do something completely different? You don't take your car, you don't go grocery shopping. Right? You don't participate in this in the roller coaster of the American economy for just 24 hours. It's like, how would you do it? I'm really serious. I invite you to think about, how do you make a day that is Shabbat, because we lost Shabbat. It used to be that Sundays were closed in America, not so long ago. Now America is open 24/7, and we can't escape. We have our phones that beep, our emails that come in, and it's like we don't know when to stop, and we have to make a conscious decision to do it. You can't. If not, you're gonna lose what the Torah is saying. You're gonna lose your soul. That's what the injunction is. Like, remember the deepest part of who you are. Remember your soul. You're not just a doing machine. There is a spiritual dimension to yourself. That's what the injunction was all about. It's like, can we one day a week just take care of things that are at a deeper level, please? Or we're going to lose ourselves. We're going to lose ourselves. All right, one last thing. Achad Ha'am. There's an Israeli poet who lived in the early 20th century, and through the birth of the state of Israel, was a very famous poet in Israel. He chose the name Achad Ha'am because he became so famous that he didn't want to be known by his actual name. So his name, Achad Ha'am, means just one of the people. That was actually his pen name, one of the people. and he's known as one of the people. That's his name. And he said, more than we have kept the Shabbat has kept us. Right? He understood that 2,000 years of Jewish suffering and exile and persecution, and we kept the two pillars that the rabbis told us to keep, the Torah and the Shabbat. And he understood that because we kept it, because we kept the practice that was unique to us, copied by the Christian tradition, choosing a different day because competition, marketing, but he really understood that because we kept the Shabbat, because we kept this tradition going, we survived as a people, as a nation. As simple as that. And so the rabbis 2,000 years ago chose well by choosing those two pillars, because it really was what kept the Jewish people together and kept us surviving throughout very, very, very dark times. Thank you. Is there time for Q&A? Yeah. We have the morning. It is ours. No, nothing else to do. No, I think we're good. I'm just watching the clock as well.
Let me explain. So the way we like to do the Q&A or comment, sometimes people want to comment.
Yeah.
If someone has a question or a comment, you can raise your hand. I'll bring you the microphone if you want to speak it yourself. The recording to the YouTube is still on. And then the rabbi will answer it, or if you want to just say it and I'll repeat it, and then the question will be answered by the rabbi. So if anyone has a question or a comment or a reflection or anything, this would be your time.
Hi, I'm finding all this fascinating, and it totally makes sense, but it's a little overwhelming.
Yes.
Because I feel like my worth is my production.
Yeah.
And it's a deep-seated thing. And I think, our economy, consumerism, is all about growing. We live in the bigger is better. And I have a hard time even conceptualizing, because to me, Sunday I come here. Sunday I also write notes, and I try and review them. And people plan to have a practice as a piece of their day. But to me, that's another kind of production. How am I going to make myself do that? Do I have the right book? I know at one point I wanted to kind of start a meditation practice, and I never did because I wanted the perfect shawl, and I didn't find it. But it just seems, and I also think of Thomas Merton, who said that the speed and rush of life is a form of violence.
Yes.
Actually. And I guess how to even have a crack in that sense, and I don't know if everybody feels that way, but I feel good when I've had a productive day. I've done what I thought I should. I've crossed off my errands. And then I feel good. I haven't watched too much TV. And if I don't feel good when I go to bed. And it's just such a big entrenched thing. I'm not sure how to find a crack other than trying to find a crack. Anyway, didn't know if you had any thoughts on the sense of overwhelm.
Is your question how to break free from this pattern, or how do you start making a crack? Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So one of the things that I recommend when people come to me and say, I want to start doing Shabbat. I want to do Shabbat. How do I do Shabbat? And they come from a place like you. It's like where they've been raised to believe that being productive is the end goal of a human being. And I said to them, you have to start really small. Really, really, really small. Because you cannot do Shabbat tomorrow the day I described it to you today. You can't. It's not going to work. Because it's too much of a shock to the system. It's literally is too much of a shock to the system. If you're going to tomorrow disconnect everything and all the things that I've mentioned, right? So I tell them, start small. So one of the things we do on Shabbat, as Shabbat begins, we light 2 candles. That's the way to mark the beginning of Shabbat. So just at sundown, there is a specific, we know what exact time that is, but it doesn't matter. When you decide that you want to begin your Shabbat day, you decide to do a little ritual. It doesn't have to be lighting candles, but this is the ritual that is part of the Jewish tradition. We light 2 candles at the edge of the beginning of Shabbat. And so I tell people, that's all I want you to do. Start with that. On Friday night at 7 p.m., whatever you decide, you light 2 candles. If you know the blessing, you say the blessing for the candles, but that's it. Then as they do that, and this becomes kind of a family ritual or personal family ritual, I said, okay, so Friday night, once you start, you decide to start, let's say start at 7 p.m. For the rest of the evening, don't watch TV, don't write, don't look at your phone, don't check the news, don't open your, just for that evening, you have your meal with family, friends, whatever, that's great. You light your candles, you have a celebratory meal, and that's it. You may read a book if that's what you love. You can read books on Shabbat, it's okay. You can even, you can't write on Shabbat, but you can play Scrabble. No, I'm serious. You can't write because writing is creating. You create something that is permanent. But Scrabble tiles are not permanent. So you can't place different tiles side by side. And the problem is how do you count the points? So that's the book made me think of that, because the way we used to do it, we played Scrabble and we tally the points with a page, we call this a bookmarker at the page where, you made 135 points. So you look page 135 and you put your bookmark in it. So you know what the score was as well, right? So it doesn't have to be onerous, it doesn't have to be a pain, it doesn't have to be somber. In fact, the rabbis did everything they could to make sure people didn't have somber Shabbats. So you find ways. But I always say to people, just start small, just like Friday evening, if that's, that's the day. It could be Saturday evening if your Sunday is your Sabbath. So Saturday night, you decide at some time, 8 p.m., whatever you want, it doesn't matter. You light a candle, you say a blessing, or you do a little ritual that is yours. And you say, between now and the moment that I'm going to go to bed, I don't do anything that is connecting to the world. I read, it's okay. I take care of myself. I don't clean. I don't wash. I don't set up. I don't rearrange. None of that.
You're sort of saying that the importance of starting with ritual.
Yes. Yeah. And during the day, come here, take your car to go on a nice hike. Just don't participate in the economy, just like take a break from it. That's it.
So you can definitely play and you can visit with your family.
Absolutely.
So you can do many things we love to do that we
Yeah.
hope to do probably some every day. I do. I like to
Right.
come to the end of my work day and enjoy a meal and my family and visiting.
exactly.
And all that's still okay.
Yeah.
It's instead of thinking about what you cannot do,
You do not have
maybe
to
we
become
think
a
about
chassid.
what
Do
we
not
are.
become a Hasidic Jew. It's okay. You can just do what works for you. But again, and it's in time, you will feel the pull of Shabbat overtake the pull of I got to be productive, because that's so much stress. It's like, oh, you can actually rest. Rest. Yes. People take naps. It's really, well, after the schnapps, you know.
I was thinking as you were talking along there that as one creates this Shabbat, that there's the three layers that you sort of alluded to, you know, the kind of deeper and deeper
Yes.
dwelling into it, that within that day there is that kind of objective separation that you talked about,
Separation.
where you separate from the common, whatever it is,
Mhm.
and then there's a turning within more as the day goes on. And I find myself, this is more of an observation, talked about starting with small things, kind of plucking from all of what you said, which was delightful, that whole idea of separation and kind of turning it on its head, that we separate in order to experience the illusion of separation.
Yes.
And it's kind of fun to kind of just find yourself spiraling down into as it goes on. Anyway, I just thought I'd mention that.
Yes, thank you. It's exactly right.
Thank you, Rabbi Olivier. It's always beautiful to hear you speak. I'm
You're
grateful to have you here today. My name is Joey, and my question is, I understand a bit about the Shabbat practices.
Yes.
I'm curious, does someone who follows the Kabbalah do that differently, or do they follow sort of the same, lighting the candles and having the dinner, or because you mentioned it's more of an internal exploration than the rabbinic laws, so I wondered if it looked different.
So again, depending on which Kabbalist you're talking to, but let's say that you're a Kabbalist that is practicing at a level that is orthodox as well, they will use the framework of the rabbinic Shabbat that I described as a portal for them to go even deeper than that. But they will use that container, because the container is beautiful in and of itself. And creating that container is very much supportive. Like I said, it's creating for yourself a meditation retreat center, you know, in time. So the container itself is extremely supportive to the deeper mystical explorations that Kabbalists would do, and not more traditional Jews who don't have access to that or are not interested. So, yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of like the Kabbalist would be, there's Reform and Conservative and Orthodox, and they fall into those sort of categories generally as well. You can be a Kabbalist Reform Kabbalist. Does that make sense?
No, I'm deeply hearing your question. I think you would be more inclined to embrace Jewish mysticism if you are invested or involved in a community and with a teacher that supports this deeper practice. I think that if you're a Reform Jew, so a Jewish person who attend the Reform, it's called the Reform denomination. We have many denominations, as there are many Christian denominations. the Reform rabbinic training does not include much anything about Jewish mysticism, though the rabbis may know bits and pieces because it's become much more available nowadays, but their training is not centered around that, and they're not asked as part of their rabbihood, if you want, to teach that to anyone. You go to contradistinction, you go to Bet Alef, and the rabbi is somewhat trained in those arts and makes it part of what the community is about. You have better chances to invest yourself in mystical teachings and meditation and things like that. If you also want to find Kabbalah in a ultra-Orthodox context, you would have to go to the Chabad. So the Chabad, they have Chabad houses pretty much everywhere in the world now. It's a very Orthodox Hasidic tradition that came from Eastern Europe, who are followers. One of the schools of the master of Kabbalah of the 1700s called the Baal Shem Tov, and they still follow his teachings and apply these Kabbalistic practices with their own ultra-Orthodox twist as well. But in the Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox world, that's where you would go see it, find it. Here in America, once you move to Israel, there are more opportunities, more different places where you could find that. But around the world, Chabad would hold the ultra-Orthodox version of Kabbalah. Communities like mine would be the more liberal, egalitarian, everybody's welcome, friendly place.
And you're kind of a rare bunny then, huh?
I unfortunately, yes. Yeah. I wish that was not the case. There are a few other rabbis around the country that I know also infuse their teachings with Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism, but they're few and far between at this point. Hopefully that will increase in time.
Along that line,
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions for you. One, could you talk a little bit about the new Hasidic movement? The new Hasidism?
I don't think so, no. I don't know what.
We talked about it when you did the class on Hasidism.
Yeah, again, there's different groups that are, especially in Israel, that are trying to do different things and reclaim some of the Hasidic. So the Hasidic movement is that movement that was born in Eastern Europe that embraced Kabbalah from the 1700s. So there are now in Israel different Hasidic movements that have sprung up outside of Chabad, but I don't have the space here and the time for that.
Well, I'll ask you the other one because I think it might be shorter because
Yeah.
we brought up the idea of Kabbalah and the Sabbath. Could you tell people a little bit about the Sabbath bride?
The Sabbath bride. So that is, in fact, a Kabbalistic practice that was created by the Kabbalist rabbis who lived in Tzfat, in northern Israel in the 1600s. A huge Kabbalistic Jewish community. A lot of the greatest Kabbalistic teachers lived there and taught there, and a lot of their writing came to us from Tzfat, from Tzfat. And they had a tradition on Friday evening to go out in the field and sing a song that welcomed the Shabbat bride into their lives as Shabbat was coming. They understood Shabbat to be the divine feminine presence that came to be married to them. It was the Shabbat was seen as a union between the Jewish people and the divine feminine. And the Shabbat bride represents the Shekhinah, what we call the Shekhinah in the Kabbalah. The Shekhinah is connected to that word that I used earlier, the Mishkan, which I translated as the tabernacle. But it's interesting to connect the words together. So the tabernacle is, in fact, the divine feminine presence in the world. And that presence has gone into exile, as far as we're concerned, when the temple was destroyed. But every Shabbat, we welcome her back into our lives and espouse and marry her every Friday night. As part of a Kabbalistic understanding of embracing the divine feminine in our practice. Yeah.
Thank you again, Rabbi Olivier. That's beautiful presentation, and thanks to everyone who had wonderful concentration and everybody very focused and had good ways of thinking about how we might all incorporate these concepts and practices and ideas into our lives. So we will go ahead with our ending of our service. Remember, we can gather downstairs afterward. The rabbi will stay for maybe a few minutes at least, and we have our guiding council meeting at 11:45. So we will at this time take a few moments to share our wealth with our community and pass our plate, and those people in cyberspace are very generous and welcoming to make their contributions online or send a check to the sanctuary. It can also be done with a click online if you feel so inspired. And this contribution goes to keeping our sacred and wonderful, beautiful, historic building up to date and safe and open for everybody, and for all of our programs, which we have here within and without. And speaking of our programs, we have many upcoming gatherings, many gatherings every week, every day of the week, many evenings. Some are in person, some are online in Zoom classes. Everything can be found on our website. I know our website was down for a couple days this week, but we got it back up. That was a problem with with Bluehost, not with our particular website, but the server was down, so that's back up. And we have listings of all the regular classes that meet, our meditation group on Thursday evening, our Yeshivas circle, the medicine circle that Siswinkle does, and the Course in Miracles, and many, many different opportunities to gather together and to enjoy each other's company in a sacred way, and anything that might speak to you. We also have our Sunday services, of course, and next Sunday we have our second Sunday, the Universal Worship Service, presented by Joey and Rich and myself, and that will be where we celebrate and report about and talk about the scriptures of many different traditions on a certain theme. And then, of course, we have some special events, and I know that Jamal is having a special one-day workshop class that he's holding on August 23rd, I believe it is. I have to check my calendar. And it's just going to be a one-day class here in person at the sanctuary. No Zoom, no electronic transmission of the class. But if you live here and would like more information about that, check with me, and I'll have the announcement going out soon. Are there any other special events or particular things that people would like to mention?
This coming Saturday, which the second Saturday, is when we have our Faith and Social Justice study circle. And what we've been doing is we're taking people from, different, teachers and that from different religious traditions, and we'll read something that they've written, about, how we as people of faith face injustice and how we deal with injustice and how we, what we can do to, to ameliorate that. And this time it's we're doing the writings of Rabbi Heschel. So, folks could come. We're particularly studying a passage that he wrote in the early '60s on the civil rights movement, which he was pivotal in here. He was one of Dr. King's advisors. And in any event, we started it last month and decided almost immediately that there's way too much of this to unpack in 1 month. As a matter of fact, I think we spent the entire time discussing 2 sentences out of what he'd written. A lot like our Maimonides classes, but it's at 3 o'clock. Yeah, it's at 3 o'clock. It's here. It's upstairs. And also, though, if you can't make it here in person, I will be sending out the website because we're doing it hybrid, so it's on both Zoom and in person.
Thank you. Very good. Well, if there are no more announcements, then we'll say goodbye to the people online and thank them for being here and ring our little bell. Before we